On this episode, we talk with Hyder Mirza, RN working in the surgical intensive care unit at Henry Ford, Detroit. We discuss starting a nursing career amidst a pandemic,
coping with the stress of the unknown,
recognizing how the times apply to your life's mission,
and creating a future
fueled by choice.
This is A Few Choice Words, the Fueled by Choice pod snack. A tasty morsel of inspiration and stories of choice from some of our favorite humans in the world.
A few choice words.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the past years, there's so much to talk about, you know?
I know.
Yeah.
So you shadowed me. How long ago was that?
That was 2019.
Okay, so a couple of years.
That was like June 2019. Yeah.
Okay. I actually reached out to Greg Marshman, who's one of my close friends, and I was like, how's Hyder doing? Like, he's like, oh, he's groomed for anesthesia school. Like, he wants it bad. I'm like, that's awesome to hear that you're really working hard.
Yeah. Ever since I shadowed you, I was like, man, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, that's great, man. I could tell you were really into it, and it was
it's
good
crazy.
day.
Yeah, it's crazy because back then I had the passion, but I didn't really have the knowledge base. It was just like, I just want to shadow you and see how it was.
Yeah.
And I was so motivated. And ever since then, I look at myself, I was like, man, I was a fetus.
Yeah. It's crazy to go in the operating room and like look at all the vents and stuff. And it's like totally over your head when you first see it. And then it's like second nature. I mean, once you start school and get into a program and stuff, it'll all become second nature to you. So
that's what I'm kind of hoping for.
So you started your nursing career not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I actually I started May of 2020.
Okay.
So I graduated right when like COVID was starting. So COVID started like right around March, but it didn't get really bad until like April.
Yep.
So right around then they had cut off school and they made it all online.
Okay. And you had already had your clinicals and stuff in, and
I already had all my clinicals in. I had finished my immersion. So that wasn't really a problem for me. It was a problem for some other students.
Okay.
But I was really lucky to have everything already done.
Cool.
But I already had an internship, or we kind of call it a nursing externship.
Right. Yep.
I already had that in the surgical ICU, like Henry Ford downtown. It's like a surgical ICU, kind of trauma ICU. So I was really lucky to have that internship ready. So they already offered me a job before I even graduated.
Cool. And that was on P4, right?
Yeah.
That's my my alma mater.
Yeah.
That's where
I remember that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to get into an ICU right out of school. Like, not a lot of people do that because it's an intensive care unit. It's an intense job for sure. And you're seeing a lot right up front, right off the bat.
You said P4?
Yeah, P4.
What does that mean?
I think it's just P4 was the surgical ICU, and then P5 was the cardiac ICU.
Gotcha.
So it's just the wing, I think, and it was 4th and 5th floors, and then there's other floors, obviously, in that wing. So,
yeah, exactly.
So you started basically during like the heat of the pandemic. What was that? What was that like for you?
So this is really interesting to talk about. I'm really passionate about talking about it, actually.
Good.
I graduated during COVID, and if it's not already hard to graduate and go straight into an ICU, just imagine that like multiplied by like 100 times. Because graduating during COVID, and at the time, my whole unit had practically turned into a COVID unit. I mean, honestly, the whole hospital turned into a COVID hospital. And because we're in the ICU, we were getting the worst of the worst patients, the sickest patients, you know?
Yeah.
So I was already stressed out going into the ICU as a new grad, still just trying to learn the basic medications, still trying to learn the basics. So while I was still learning the basics, I also had to take care of such sick patients, you know? So it was a huge like learning curve. But I'm very motivated. I'm very passionate about what I do. So even on my off days, I'm putting in work, I'm studying critical care. I'm doing that just because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I also had the advantage of the year-long internship. But going into COVID right away, it was an unknown virus. Everybody was so scared.
Yeah.
I was still living with my family, and my dad has like some comorbidities. So I never told my parents that it was a COVID unit. Because if I go home to them and they know that, they'll freak out.
Yeah. I mean, what do you, it's hard because your own family, your own blood is who you can talk to about this stuff. And when you're in a situation where like you're living with them and you don't want to freak them out and have to not stay at their house or not have a place to stay.
Yeah.
That's a really stressful thing. I think one thing for me, I was very lucky because I live by myself. So I could come home and not really worry about passing it on to anybody, but I was very cautious about going to see my parents. They live like 45 minutes away. But yeah. I had coworkers. One of the most stressful things for me was some of my coworkers and my closest friends had little kids. And so they were freaked out. We have to go in the rooms and like intubate and all of this stuff. And we had COVID patients in the OR when we weren't doing that. And they were worried about like going home, and they were sleeping in the basement, and they were stripping their clothes before they got inside and showering and like wearing N95s around the house. So yeah, it's props to you for getting through it for sure.
It was I want to say it was really stressful.
I was going to ask you on that stress note, what were some of the things that you did to maintain like I don't know what the right word would be, to minimize your negative stress? Like, did you work out? Did you meditate? Was there any like specific routine that you had after work that you tried to get into to minimize that negative stress?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because really I want to say it was probably 2020 was the most stressful year of my life. Because I mean, really, like I said, going into the ICU and then with COVID going on and being scared for your parents and being scared for your family members. And on top of that, my aunt was in the hospital. And I was spokesperson for her. So it was just a very stressful year. So I really had to think of some coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So I usually, like for college, I used to go to the gym, like 5 times a week just to like stress relief and all that stuff. But gyms had closed, and I didn't really want to go to gyms because I was kind of scared,
Yeah, definitely.
So I had one dumbbell in my house.
Was it 80 pounds?
No, it was probably like one of those adjustable, like 20-pound ones, It's all rusty and whatever. So I made do with that as good as you could, and just like a bunch of push-ups and that stuff. But I also I picked up a couple of hobbies. I started woodworking. I made myself, a couple tables.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I got into that. It was something I always wanted to do. But really, you couldn't really take away all of the stress, because you got to know that I don't think anybody's really been through this, when was the last time a pandemic happened,
Yeah.
Because every single day walking into work felt like you were walking into a war. Like you didn't know what to expect, And,
all the information is new every day at that point. I remember having phone calls with Drew, and he would kind of keep me updated and in the loop. And it was, with that first part was extremely wild. It was insane.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think it's it was very, nobody knew how it was transmitted. And so people were getting COVID, and it's like, well, where did you get the virus? They're like, well, I work with it every day, but I also like had to go to the grocery store to get stuff. So I don't know if I touched something or I was in a patient's room and I got it. Like nobody knew. And it's crazy because there's people that you probably know, Hyder, and I don't know if you had COVID or not, but people that were working intensely with these patients and never got sick. And it's like, how it doesn't make any sense. There's still no explanation to it. And I think a lot of things we'll learn about the virus in the years to come, but for now it's like, let's just get this over with if we can.
Oh yeah, sure. I was I completely hear you with that, but I was really fortunate actually. I never ended up getting it.
That's good.
Although I worked with COVID for I want to say about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
I never really got it. They gave us I was really fortunate that my hospital made us very well equipped for it.
Yeah.
They gave us like these ventilators to wear and all that kind of stuff. But
oh yeah.
Even then it was still really scary because, you know, I mean, you'll get some crazy patients sometime that, you know, are combative or are withdrawing from alcohol or drugs and stuff like that. So, we have this thing where if a trauma patient comes in, you have to close the doors and heat up the room and all that stuff.
Right.
And you'll get that type of patient. If they're COVID positive too, you have to wear a ventilator.
Oh yeah.
You have to wear gloves and you have to wear the gown and all of that. You know, it gets really tough. So I'll be in one of those rooms and I'll just be sweating so much.
Yeah.
And then I'll be trying to, you know, like handle the patient or like trying to get them to settle down. And the ventilator is kind of like slipping off of your face. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the day. I was like, this is the day I'm going to get COVID. Or if you even sneeze and it kind of dislodges your ventilator, you're like, okay, well, we'll see 2 weeks from now how I'll feel.
Yeah. You know? And it's like, what do you call that a positive exposure? Technically, like, yeah. I mean, everybody's asking you whether you've been exposed to a COVID patient or somebody that's sick. And every day, like something happens that's kind of sketchy and your mask slips off or whatever. And, you just roll with it. Hopefully you don't get sick.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember those warming up those trauma rooms and like the big gunshots and stuff that would come in and how hot it was. And like we're wearing scrubs with t-shirts and I couldn't even imagine being gowned up and all that stuff.
What's the temperature when they warm it up?
Ooh, do you know exactly what they heat it up to?
It's just it's a cold, warm, hot, like gauge. You can't really see the temperature, but you just put it all the way up.
I mean, it's probably in the 80s. I mean, you try to keep like euthermia, they call it. So you want the patient to be body temperature. So you would think in the 98 degree range would be
That's
ideal.
Crazy. And you're fully gowned. You're double. What were you ever double gowned?
Yeah. Double glove.
Double glove.
Yep. We had like surgical, we would do the mask with the respirator, which we had to get on our own. It was kind of like any protocols were out the window and we just made our own thing up. But we had respirators. We would do 2 gowns. We tried the Pappers for a little bit, which were the big hoods with the fans in them. And they were just too much. But we would have patients like come down to the OR and we'd have to gown up and everything. And we'd be in there for a couple hours if it was like an ortho surgery or somebody's getting their leg fixed or something. And it was exhausting. Like, and we're in like chilled rooms at that point. I couldn't imagine having to go in and out of patient rooms, fully gowned, fully masked like that all night long. So I give you guys all the credit in the world, ICU nurses. I mean,
yeah, thank you.
And I remember listening to a podcast with This American Life about, and they actually went in and followed one of the physicians and a couple of residents at Henry Ford Hospital. And they talked about how creepy it was to hear the knocking on the windows outside the patient's room. Because when you're in there and you need something and you need to get a hold of your nurse friend to bring you like medication or whatever it is, you have to knock on the window. And so you just walk around the ICU and you just hear knocking constantly. And it's like this very eerie thing. Like, and I know you guys probably like held up signs and stuff. Like, how did you communicate?
Yeah, we, so on our unit, we had kind of these see-through doors that you can just kind of lock. So we would take markers and just write on the doors.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
And then we'd push the patient's call light and we'd like start knocking.
Yeah.
It's actually, all this coming back feels like PTSD.
I know, man.
Yeah.
So a lot of those techniques of communication, was that just kind of on the spot too, where someone picked up a marker and then it just continued from there?
Yeah, that's literally what happened. We would write the patient's vital signs. We would write what we need. We would write, like medications, all that kind of stuff, and all like important information right on the door. Whereas you couldn't do that before COVID because it's HIPAA. You're breaking a HIPAA law where you can't expose patient information. But at that time, family wasn't allowed to come in.
Yeah.
It was very strict. There's no family. We would just FaceTime them. And that in itself was very emotionally grueling on us because these patients were isolated, completely isolated from anybody except from your nurse and maybe your physician. And half the times the physician wouldn't want to go in the room because they don't want to expose themselves. So you would go in for them. So the way they would contact their family is we would be their contact. We would go in and FaceTime their family. And a lot of times, like I said, these patients are really sick. We're getting the sickest of the sickest. And as you know, in Detroit, was a huge hotspot. So we would FaceTime them. And I want to say like 80% of the time, the patient was intubated and had a ventilator and wasn't even awake. They were sedated. So we were just FaceTiming families so they can see them. And that was really hard on us nurses as well, because it's very emotional seeing that. Because if the family's not there, you're their only contact. And a lot of times we would hear their last words. We would be that person for them. So it was really stressful. There's a lot of times where I've held FaceTime and I sat next to the patient and they passed away in my arms and not their arms. And they're only able to watch, So you think you automatically know that that's stressful on the family, that's stressful for the patient. But once you see that and you go home and you see your family, you're like, and you can't even talk to your family about it because you don't want them to know you're on COVID. You don't want them to know you're working with COVID. And it becomes very stressful. It was a very stressful time for everyone. And then what's so tough is that so many of our patients were passing away, so many. So it had become quite common. I remember there was this one time a patient passed away, and an hour to 2 hours later that room was cleaned and another patient came in, and I had to put on a smile and talk to that patient. And that whole time you have to block out the fact that the person sitting in that room right before you 2 hours ago had passed away, and you're still trying to get over that. Well, you have to put it away so that you can be the best nurse, be the best person for that patient. So it was very stressful.
Once again, I give you all the credit in the world, and I know exactly how that feels. I've been through it myself, and it's not easy. And you're early on in your career, you're recognizing how much that impacts you emotionally, and I think that's an awesome thing, because it's literally like I've been a nurse for 10 years, and just now I'm starting to realize like how the trauma is affecting me because of the pandemic and needing help, because it is such a stressful time. Like I've realized I have imprints of people. Like you probably remember specifically every patient that passed away when you were in the room, and the situation, and FaceTiming the family. And that's a traumatic event that you went through. And I think in our career, it's very like, well, pull the bootstraps up, move on to the next patient. And you don't get to really talk about it. Which is one of the hardest parts. Like sometimes there's like an M&M, like a morbidity mortality conference, where you can talk about a specific case and kind of hash it out. But it is a business, and it's move forward and make money and next patient up. And you see that during even a pandemic. And I just think like I'm a huge advocate for just talking about it, kind of like we are now, and just opening up And it's cool that you're doing that and you realize that it's important.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why when I was invited to talk about this, I was very happy that you guys thought about this. And I feel like it's the perfect timing because it's sort of settling down right now. We're kind of getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's no better time to spread this message. And honestly, there's no better time to have the Fueled by Choice movement, because really everybody kind of needs that right now, you know?
I thank you for saying that. That's awesome to us. And I can't help but feel this spring, and I'm sure you're feeling it too. Like just apprehension towards the changing in the weather. And like, this is what it was like last March. And it's kind of like, you're just like, what's going to happen here? I don't know how I feel about this. Like spring's coming and it's PTSD. Like we're all experiencing it. I'm not even saying just healthcare workers, like everybody went through this together. But it's so important that people who need support can get support, and in whatever way possible. And the only way that people are going to hear the actual, the nuts and bolts and what actually happened in the hospitals is to talk about it. Because guess what? You can't really take a video camera into a hospital. You can't talk to these patients for the most part. It's crazy. So
yeah, it's really tough, but you know, we went through it for, you know, it's been about a year now. So in a way, it's taught me many things. I want to say it's taught me to be very caring, especially when talking to family members, because I've seen so much. For being so young, for being, you know, still a new grad just starting my nursing career, I've seen so much. I've experienced so much. I've had to deal with acuity and sick patients and family, and going through it with my family, myself. It's really, in a way, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's in a way aged me. It's matured me like crazy. Because in this past year, I've seen things that nobody sees my age, or really people never see at any age, you know, other than people who are working in healthcare, people who are seeing this firsthand, because it's true to some point where you don't believe it until you see it. And we were seeing it every single day. But one thing I want to say was that in a way, it's matured me where now I'm so focused and I'm not bothered by things that are not important anymore. I know what's important to me. I know that my family needs to be held close all the time, because all these families and all these patients didn't have their family. And you realize what's most important to you, you know? So through COVID, I've become so goal oriented, and really nothing stops me now. I feel like I've been through so much, and it's my duty to carry on all these lives that have passed through my hard work, through helping another patient, through helping other people. Using my knowledge to help other people I feel like is the most important thing to me now. Because really, why go into nursing, or why go into any field if it's not for helping other people? So that's my way. That's my drive, is to carry on and not let it beat me down, so that I can keep helping others, so that I can impact more lives. Really, not only here, but to people that don't have access to healthcare, you know, like you do. I remember you were telling me how you did your mission trips to the Philippines.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. And really, that's amazing. Because what you're doing is you're taking your education and helping people who have such lack of access to healthcare. And you're not getting paid for that. I mean, we're paying to go do that. That's us using our knowledge to impact the world, to help the world.
It's a great skill to have, man, what you're going to learn, going forward. And it's something that, like we've alluded to, just experience wise, actual like tactile skills. It's something that a lot of people don't learn. It's a very like focused thing. And what better way to travel the world and feel some, I know Jason and I feel this right now, like we're at a point in our lives where we want to be able to give back in some way. And what greater way to be able to do that and travel and go see things than to go actually into a third world country and give anesthesia. Now, don't get me wrong, we had a lot of fun. We had a great time on those trips, but when it comes down to it, spending 5 days in the hospital doing charitable surgeries, like you learn a lot and you see a lot and you're able to escape that and you know, have a great time otherwise, but you learn a lot. And I mean, that's going to be an awesome opportunity for you when you wrap school up and everything. So
yeah. And that's the thing. Having fun on those trips is kind of necessary, even as a nurse. You need that break from helping people, because I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that you can only do so much without becoming exhausted. And you need that getaway. I did the same thing. I went to Peru. I went for about 10 days. We did mobile clinics and all that stuff.
Awesome.
And the last 2 days we just spent it, you know, on the beach and going to the desert and all that stuff. So it's definitely needed. But even as a nurse here, you know, like sometimes when something really depressing happens, sometimes you just need to kick back after everything's done and crack a joke to your coworkers to bring up the mood, you know.
We all need to reset at some point in time.
Exactly. We all need to cope somehow. We all need to find a way to relieve the stress, you know, and what better than doing that with your coworkers that go through it all the time, you know?
Yeah, for sure, man. I know you're really gunning for anesthesia school. What kind of goals are on the plate for you now?
You mean now going into it, or after?
Like what's your timeline looking like?
So like I said, I'm very, very motivated. I'm very goal oriented. I always knew I wanted to do that. So I never stopped studying. I never, you know, even when I graduated, I was still studying. I was not even done with my orientation yet, and I was already studying for the critical care exam, or we call it the CCRN. And usually people take that 2-3 years after, and I'm taking it soon.
Yeah, good luck, man. It's a tough test.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I do things like that, and I study on my off time, and I've been taking some certifications, and then hopefully, you know, sooner rather than later, I'll be applying and going from there, because really, I was planning on doing, you know, more mission trips and all that stuff this year, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to. Yeah. So really right now, it's just trying to like hunker down and get my experience, and then take the CCRN and get that kind of certifications behind my name, because I know I have the experience. I know I have the skills. But for some schools, they just want to see that certification, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of grades and getting the appropriate tests done. I will say though, and we can talk about this more, but like everything that you talked about in this interview, that is an awesome thing to put in your essay for school. So I definitely recommend doing that, because it was a great chat.
Yeah, thank you.
We're trying to keep these kind of short, like we're calling them pod snacks, and we just packed a lot of stuff in. I know we could talk for hours about this, but we'll wrap it up. I just wanted to ask you, what does it mean to you to be fueled by choice?
So fueled by choice is actually a very significant phrase. It's not something to be taken lightly, but really to me, it's just waking up every day and making, you know, the active choice to improve myself for the sake of others, and allowing my passion to fuel my choices. It pushes me to become a better person. And then whether that's with finances, whether that's with my relationships, whether that's with studying, that's what fueled my choice means to me. It's just waking up and allowing my passions to fuel my choices, you know?
And it sounds like you're well on your way to doing that, and you're living that every day. And it's really cool to hear that we're kind of helping to motivate you as well.
Of course, definitely. That's why I was so honored to be invited here. I'm very passionate about, being fueled by choice, because that's kind of my motto in life.
Yeah.
And that's how you keep chugging through, even through all the stress and through all the doubts and all that. That's how you push through.
Cool, man.
Well said.
Yeah. So I really appreciate being invited to talk, and I look forward to speaking to many other people about everything we've gone through, because it's really deserving of being spoken about.
Yeah, we totally agree. And we'll be sure to set a shirt aside for you for the interview. And if you want to come shadow me at any time and kind of brush up on things and ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. But thanks a lot for coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, man. Good luck to you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Good night.